regiment, you are over the target. You are authorized to fire at will.
Hey, thanks for stopping by this evening. You're going to notice my voice is a little off. I was at the Minnesota GOP convention from very early this morning. I got there before most of the delegates even started showing up, and actually, quite frankly, before most of the candidates for governor started showing up. And I got a couple of man on the street interviews. One of them was actually with Matt Burke, former Minnesota Vikings player. Very high contracted individual. And I got a few minutes with him, and then I got a few minutes with one of the important people at the convention, which was a first-time delegate. And so I'm going to be working on those videos to get those out. I want to share my thoughts, but before I get into my thoughts, I just want to let you guys know that if the link works here, Larvita McFarquhar from Haven's Garden over in most kind of west central Minnesota is going to be joining us to give us an update on her court case as the state has continued after the pandemic has passed and the governor's emergency powers are relinquished. The state has continued to persecute her, not just prosecute, but to persecute her. So she's going to be joining me here in a little bit, and so we're going to be playing it by ear. In fact, I'm going to check to see. It looks like she might have messaged me. She's calling. Just a second. Let me see what she says here. Hey, Larvita, what's going on? I started the show waiting for you. Do you have a VPN? No. Here I have an idea. I'm gonna put the link in the live stream, and you can go to YouTube and see if it'll let you in there. All right. Bye. The joys of live streaming, ladies and gentlemen. Bear with us. Awkward silence, I know. Don't go away on me. All right. So anyway, where was I? Oh, so yeah. I mean, we had this the interview with the young lady who was her first time at a convention as a delegate, and I'm going to have the Matt Burke up, and we'll see where it goes from there. It was an interesting day in the Minnesota GOP convention, and it's, I guess, for lack of better terminology, it was disappointing and frustrating. We saw some things play out at the Minnesota GOP convention that most of us who have been paying attention for the last couple of years, but who have been involved in the GOP for quite a while, we've known about the GOP. And the reality of that is that the old guard GOP does not like the conservative resurgence that is happening. I'm working on several stories from around the state right now where individuals are reporting to me that over and over and over again, they're being railroaded either out of elected positions within the party, or they're being shut down by an established oligarchy within their local county or BPOUs or their Senate districts or congressional districts, who hates them for being conservative. And what we saw today was Kendall Qualls get caught in a lie during the convention. He got caught in a lie. And to some degree, the handwriting was on the wall for Mike Murphy, come like the 258th, vote. It was ridiculous. I mean, I think they ultimately ended up having 9 votes today to get an endorsement, and they ended up endorsing Scott Jensen. But Kendall Qualls, I believe he was handpicked by the GOP establishment. Kendall Qualls gave an overture of allowing, or not allowing, but bringing Murphy on as his lieutenant governor, and then backtracked on that. And the text messages exist that show this happening. And so Murphy, when he conceded that he wasn't going to get the nomination, didn't have a chance, threw his hat in the ring for Jensen and called out Qualls. Now, everybody talked about Qualls being an outsider, right? Well, here's the deal. Qualls was endorsed by the biggest insider in St. Paul, and that's Gazelka. Gazelka is a massive insider. It's disgusting how much of an insider he is. He did nothing. And this is very important. I want people to understand. Larvita's in the green room waiting to come in. But this is really important for people to understand. Gazelka didn't do a damn thing for all the small business owners out there. And you want to know the refrain I heard all day long today? All day long from these people running for governor and lieutenant governor. We've got to do something about the Twin Cities. We've really got to reach out. We've got to fix the Twin Cities. What's that do for me in small town Minnesota? Everybody made a big deal out of Walls referring to Rocks and Cows, Minnesota, right? But the GOP treats Rocks and Cows, Minnesota exactly the same. Oh, Larvita disappeared again. The GOP treats the Rocks and Cows of Minnesota exactly the same way that Walls treats Rocks and Cows, Minnesota. There are very few people, and I want to name a couple of other people today before I bring Larvita in. Lacey Johnson proved to be a stand-up candidate as a vice presidential candidate, as a lieutenant governor candidate with Mike Murphy. He wants to fight. He wants to fight because he's a Republican who lives in North Minneapolis, and he wants that city to survive. He wants that city to succeed. And he's willing to dig, and he's willing to fight, and he's willing to, beat them is what he wants to do. He wants to whoop them is what he said. I want to whoop these people. And somebody else garnered a lot of respect from me today. Neil Shaw. When it became apparent to Neil that he wasn't going to get the nomination, he threw his hat and his delegates to Mike Murphy. And he did it by calling out the establishment GOP. That was moxie. And I am going to be working to have Neil on to talk to him about that and about why he made that decision. And I had communications with him a couple of times today. The establishment GOP does not give a rip about you if you are not in the Twin Cities. The establishment GOP does not give a rip about you if you are a conservative, traditionalist, constitutionalist, liberty-minded person. They speak the language, but it doesn't mean a damn thing to them. It doesn't mean a thing to them because they hate the base. They will manipulate you and tell you that we've got to get walls out, and they say all of these wonderful things that we all want to hear and we all know to be true. But they're not willing to do the hard work of actually listening to the base. A number was quoted in me today. Yesterday, they did an impromptu, unofficial poll of all the people that were at this convention, of all those delegates that were there. Over 1,000, 55% were first-time delegates in the state of Minnesota. Do you understand what that means? They were outsiders looking for an outsider. And you know what they walked away from the convention with? Outsiders represented by an insider. And we're supposed to believe he's got the cojones to take on Walz and beat him. I want Walz gone too. But I also want the old guard GOP gone. We didn't learn about this from Jen Carnahan and her comments about the conservatives in the party. We haven't learned anything. Han isn't any better. I'm this close, ladies and gentlemen. I'm this close. And there is I'm figuring out how I'm going to deal with this because there is a candidate for Congressional District 1 today who, in my eyes, pulled a slimeball move and said on the stage, I align with this candidate most closely, but I can't support him because I want to win. My political views are the same as his for the most part, most closely aligned to with him. But I have to support this candidate because I'm more interested in winning. And that has got to stop. That's why the Republicans lose. Time and time and time again, that's why the Republicans lose elections. Because they worry more about getting themselves in the right camp because they think this person might be able to win. And what actually ends up happening is every single time that we do this, that person compromises and moves further to the left and abandons the base. And the base has had it. You have no idea the number of people I talked to on my way out of the convention today. Disgusted by the people they were there to support and disgusted by the moves that the GOP played. And here's what we're going to do to bring Larvita in. Larvita is the person who's hurting through all of this. Not one of them mentioned Lisa Hansen. Not one of them mentioned Lisa Monet Zarza. Not one of them mentioned Larvita McFarquhar. Not one of them. They talked about shutdowns and they talked about stay-at-home orders, but they didn't mention the victims by name. But they sure mentioned talking about taking down the Met Council. They talked about the morgue that Walz got, and they talked about the stupidity of the Walz checks. But not one of them mentioned the victims by name because scorched earth. Larvita, sorry for making you sit in the car like that.
No, it's fine. Thank you for having me on. I really appreciate
You
it.
talked to me yesterday and said you needed to come on. We've talked about having doing another revisit, and in the past I had you and Lisa on several months ago, and kind of with the round table about everything that's been going on for the three of you. But you had a court. You had a ruling from a judge in your case come down, and for the people who can't see the documents, because I got to be honest with you, I didn't get a chance to get it set up to show it to everybody. So we're going to work on maybe putting that up on my Subscribe Star for people to see. What case did you have in front of this judge? What was this one about? Let's start with that.
Yes, this one was for the trespassing and disorderly conduct they gave me for taking my daughter to SMSU, her college. She was a PSAO student and she was being bullied by her professor for not wearing a face mask.
A minor. She was a minor at the time.
Yep, she was 16. And the thing I guess I really need to get the point across is that, the school had the exemption. They knew that she had an exemption from her doctor. The professor had an exemption. Oh, sorry, the light just went out. Can you see me?
Yeah, yeah, it's all
Sorry.
right. No,
Car.
nobody wants to look at you. I'm the handsome one right here.
That's fine. The professor had a letter from my daughter stating that she had an exemption, because I had all my daughters write their professors and let them know that they had an exemption from their doctor, stating that they couldn't wear a face mask or a shield at any point or any time. I'm just going to turn the car on. If it's too loud, let me know. Sorry, I'm doing this from the car. And so everyone knew going in that there was an exemption on the table. The school knew, the president of the school, everyone knew. And so she was being bullied by her professor, and I walked her to school, and they cited me for trespassing and disorderly conduct. Is that where we should start? But I wanted to back up on something that you said, and I'm sorry that this isn't coming on. Okay. Sorry, guys, about all of that.
It's very good studio lighting. I love it.
Thank you. About the governors, the people that were running for governor and not being outsiders, and me watching and what I've been dealing with for the last, well, actually 4 years, but 2 years with COVID and stuff with the government. The problem is they don't understand their oath. It comes down to that. They don't even understand the Constitution. They don't even understand anything that America stands for. And that's the problem that I'm seeing with these court cases, with the judges, with everything that's going on in our country right now. And it's just so frustrating actually living through it, with all actually with all the big things, January 6th. My business is being shut down, just their overreach, the overstepping of their authority that they do not have. And seeing what the judge did and him coming down, I thought he was going to be, I was praying that he'd be a man of honor, a man who was courageous to do the right thing no matter what, I like to say the whims of the times are at this moment. And it's so disappointing to find out that he really isn't. And we keep waiting for these, I keep saying we keep waiting for a savior, we keep waiting for people, to do the right thing, to step up. And the problem is we're not seeing it, and we, the people, have to do what's right no matter what. And yes, it's hard, and I'm not saying it's easy, but if we don't do it, we clearly see that they're not going to. And that's frustrating.
And that's kind of, no, and that's why I was saying what I was saying too, about the fact that there's little to no mention about any of the people actually out in Rocks and Cows. I mean, they made references to it, but all of the emphasis was on what they were going to do to help the Twin Cities, because it even within the Republican Party, it's almost like there's nothing outside of the Twin Cities and Rochester now.
Mm-hmm.
And in there was no mention of the actual victims. There was this amorphous reference to people who have lost businesses, but then the focus was right back to, and then there was a candy store that was allowed to stay open. Well, yeah, we're all familiar with that hypocrisy, but let's name names of the people who are actually, let's personalize the damage that's been done. And nobody did it. And I can't understand why they wouldn't talk about, like, you're sitting here with people that are predominantly from rural areas, and they're all sitting there just clapping every time they talked about destroying getting rid of the Met Council, every time they talked about fixing what was wrong in the Twin Cities. And I live in a small town that's 2 hours south and east of the Twin Cities, for lack of better terminology, 2 hours south and east. And the crime is bleeding out into us already. It's bled into Rochester. It's bleeding further south. What are you going to do for us? You think fixing the Twin Cities helps us? It doesn't help us. And here you sit, still being victimized by the state. Nobody's mentioning you. And then you get this this ruling from the judge yesterday. So you argued for a dismissal of the trespassing charge. And the disorderly conduct, right?
Yeah. So what had happened at my pretrial, they said that if I had the judge be the jury, they'd move it down to a petty misdemeanor, and then they would throw out the disorderly conduct.
Did a bench trial.
Bench trial. And so, again, I was saying, how can we have a trial when I don't have all my evidence? How can you have a trial? And this is the point that people don't understand. I've been asking for my evidence how long ago? So how can a judge move it forward when they haven't released my evidence that I've been asking for? And, I went to the Lyon County Sheriff's Department the day before, and I finally got one of my recordings, one of the recordings that I'd been asking for months and months and months.
You have the body cam footage?
I didn't have all the body cam.
No, but you have some of the body cam footage.
Some of it. Yep.
I want that.
Okay, I'll send it over. If you go to my Rumble, it's L Larvita. All the ones that they gave me are up there. And it's just so, I don't know if you probably didn't have a chance to read what the verdict was or what his ruling was on the verdict.
I've been recuperating, Larvita.
I'm
so sorry.
No.
Can you hear it in my voice?
Yes.
I'm going for my Barry White sound.
Yeah, and I was gonna. Yeah, I'm right there with you. It's been a long week for all of us, especially with what's going on now. But with the ruling, and again, everyone, I guess they should understand. I've always said from the beginning that I don't believe that I need to have, or any of us need to have, an exemption from for the mask mandate. But I followed the exemption rules and had an exemption from my doctor stating clearly that we don't have to wear a face mask or a face shield of any kind. And then I would say, oh, but I gave the judge a religious exemption because that's where my rights come from. And that's what I said to the judge. My rights don't come from man. They come from Yahweh, Jehovah, the creator of the universe alone. And he's given me my breath. And then I quoted Bible verses that clearly show that the breath of life comes from him. And so, but I said, I did this as a courtesy, just to follow, because we Republicans, constitutionalists, we try to follow, constitutional rules and things that are constitutional. But sadly, if anyone had seen my last video where I was at the sheriff's department, and on there he admitted that they do not follow the Constitution. Can you believe that? Out of his own mouth, he says we do not follow the Constitution. And I was in shock.
The sheriff said that?
Yes, the Lyon County sheriff said he does. Go to my video that it's up on Rumble. Says he does not follow the Constitution.
I would like for you to send me the link to that, because what I'll do is I will do a breakdown walkthrough of your video.
Okay.
I might have some insider knowledge.
Okay. But I was like, what? But even the worst part, even on what is so frustrating, which I have to get my transcript and I will put it up there so everyone can see. On the stand, Mike Mumford, the security officer, lied. The police officers lied on the stand. They said that they did not know. I asked them, did they know that I had an exemption? They said no. Mind you, that's the first. I sat down with Mike Mumford before they even before the policemen were even called by SMSU. I had sat down with Mike Mumford for over 15 minutes and explained the exemption that my daughters and I had. Explained. Leave that door open, please. Explained everything. And so for him to lie on the stand to say, no, he didn't know that I had an exemption was just mind boggling. I'm like, what? How did you not? What do you mean you don't know that I have an exemption? And for the policeman to say the same thing, because that everyone who knows me, who's been following me, knows that's the only thing that comes out of my mouth is I say I have an unlawful. What do I always say? I have an exemption, even though it's unlawful, unethical, unbiblical. Those are the words that always come out. And I clearly was waving around the exemption to these people. But when you actually get a chance to read what the judge ruled, we can go over it if you want to. But on one of the parts, it's so pathetic. He actually says that because he had asked me, what is your disability? Because I was arguing they had no right to stop me from the beginning. Before the police were even called, when I had the conversation with Mike Mumford, they had no authority to stop me after that. Once I said I have an exemption, I have a disability, leave my daughter alone, leave me alone, nothing, but they didn't. And so the judge in his ruling stated, this is why it's so crazy, and people again don't know their authority. He said that because I didn't tell him what my disability is, even though I gave him my religious exemption, I gave him my doctor's note stating that I cannot wear a face mask or a covering. He said because I didn't tell him what the disability is, he's basically not going to accept my disability. I'm like, this is
So you gave the judge a copy of the exemption.
Yep.
Written by a doctor.
Exactly.
Which you did out of decency, because even though you don't feel it's necessary, which I think is actually true as well. I think the religious exemption covers everyone.
Thank you.
There is no such thing as the state should not have any kind of say in whether or not you have a religious exemption. There should be no litmus test.
Exactly.
For who gets to determine, or not. There shouldn't be somebody out there determining what the litmus test is for a legitimate religious exemption.
Exactly.
Because that allows the state to set parameters for my free exercise of my religion. And,
exactly.
And just because somebody, like knowing you coming from a Christian perspective, are you being carjacked?
No, I'm opening the door to get more light in here because it's getting darker outside. So I'm sorry.
I didn't know if maybe you're being carjacked there.
No one wants to mess with me. They're like, yeah, let's leave her alone. She's been through enough.
She's Puerto Rican. She will tear you apart.
Exactly.
When they are able to deduce for you whether or not you have a valid religious exemption, then they are now the judges and quite frankly the arbiters of what is right religion. And even the ones coming from a Christian perspective don't have the right or the authority to do that because their Christian perspective might be different than yours. And so it's just absolutely mind-boggling that the judge is going to quibble over that. That's an absolute infringement upon the First Amendment on the part of the judge. And this is where, I've had this conversation with a lot of people here lately, and I ask them, is everything that a judge, or let's even say the Supreme Court, is everything that the Supreme Court rules or a judge rules constitutional? And the answer to that question is absolutely not, because how many times are judges overturned by a higher court? And even Supreme Courts reverse their own decisions, as we know could be coming with Roe v. Wade. And that's why this entire argument about whether or not something's valid or not valid, it should be removed from the courts, period. When it comes to a religious exemption for not, and there again, there's a reasonable expectation on that. I mean, claiming a religious exemption for not having to have a driver's license, for something like driving your car down the road, which is not a right, it's literally a privilege. Nobody in their right mind is going to, well, okay, we'll toss out the freaks in the sovereign nation, the sovereign citizen movement, but nobody in their right mind is going to argue something that's really that like obviously simple. But when it comes to something like what you have to put on your face or put in your body, no one has any authority to tell you to violate that. And I don't care how high the court goes. And when a judge starts ordering that, they've made themselves an enemy, an opponent to the Constitution. And you've run into that. This isn't the first time that this is, this has been going on for you for over 2 years. Well, exactly. 2 years now. Yeah. Almost 2 years now. I mean, you had your entire charges delivered to you in a Christmas bow wrapped package on, was it Christmas Eve?
Somewhere around there.
Somewhere around Christmas Eve from our wonderful Attorney General, the law-abiding woman beater that he is. So this isn't a new struggle for you. Do you see this as if you weren't Larvita who owned Haven's Garden, do you think this would have ever been an issue? if you would have been just some mom with her kids, or do you think that full force was brought down on you by the sheriff's office and by the school and ultimately by the judge because of who you are?
That's a good question. I
I have
do.
one of those once in a while.
I just assumed it was because I said no and I stuck up for my daughter and for myself. So I, I believe they would have probably did it to anyone that um, stood up for what was right, so that they could prove a point. But I could be wrong. Maybe it was because of who I am. But
Well, but let's think about this for a minute though. How many people do you know that didn't wear masks? And you and I both know a lot of people that didn't wear any facial coverings and went a lot of places and people got upset, but they just continued. I mean, you've seen my video, some of my videos where I went in and refused. And I didn't get arrested. I mean, ultimately it got brought up in the attack on me by my former employer. But ultimately no one called the cops on me. And I thought from day one when I watched your video, because you live streamed at least a good 10-15 minutes of the confrontation. I think right up until the point you were arrested, because you were actually arrested or detained.
yeah, I wasn't arrested. I was detained. Yes.
You were detained, yeah. Right up until the point you were detained, you were shooting video. So, I was asking myself then is would they be making this much of a situation out of this if this wasn't Larvita, who has already run afoul of the system?
You could be right, because they said little comments like, "Oh, she's back again. She's starting her, starting her
Oh
stuff."
yeah, that's on the
So
audio.
yeah, and so it could be that. So I guess I just assumed it was more just because. But then sometimes yeah, I just assumed it was because I was standing my ground and speaking up. But you're
There,
probably right. It was probably a
there
combination of
probably
both.
is some of that, but I think a lot of it comes down to the fact of who you are. And quite frankly, the number of sheriffs in Minnesota that are actually decent, upstanding people I can count probably on one hand the numbers that I have met that are decent and have done their level best to refrain from being involved.
And
And so
I think that's hard for me, because I try to give everyone the benefit of the doubt, and I try to see the good on each side and see, I know they were stuck between a rock and a hard place, um, and it was hard for them. But what I do expect from them is to, one. That's what I always told my sheriff. I said, just follow the Constitution. I can't ask you to do anything more than that. Just follow it, and then speak up. But it's hard when they're just trying to, I guess, not rock the boat. And I didn't know that, speaking up and doing what was right is rocking the boat. I thought that's what, one, being a sheriff, being a police officer or a peace officer, that's what you're supposed to do what's right, no matter what. Even though we see all the other stuff where sometimes they don't do the right thing, there are those policemen that don't do that. But you want to believe that most of them are, there for the people. They love their job and they really want to help. And that's what I like to believe, but when you clearly see them lying on the stand, lying under oath, and for no reason. I mean, just for no reason. Like, how can you just sit there and bold-faced lie on the stand, and then like it's nothing? Like it's nothing. It's
so
hard
what
to.
so in his ruling, was it an adjudication of guilt then on your part?
Um, What do you mean by adjudication of guilt?
Did he declare that you are indeed guilty?
Yes.
And did he is now will there be sentencing? Or
Yeah.
did
So,
he
yep, it's a fine. So I have to pay a fine. So they took out the that was another thing they did at the pre-trial. If I had him do the bench trial, then there wouldn't be any jail time or anything like that. So that was a blessing. But
and you've been representing yourself
yes, which is
because
very difficult.
because who can afford an attorney?
Right, but it was worse than that. There wasn't even an option of money. It was just no one wanted to take on the case. No one wanted to deal with the face mask covering. That's what was so upsetting.
Yeah.
I'm like, you don't even give me a chance to say I don't have the money. You know, like, oh, I can't raise the money.
Oh no, we don't want
It's
to. Yeah.
just,
What about like you were entitled to a public defender, I would imagine.
oh yeah, you can get a public defender, but I've known enough cases that public defenders is probably one of the worst ways you can go in a court in a criminal case. They're not really there to if you're innocent and help plead, make sure
They're
that
just
you're
there to close the case,
exactly.
get the file taken care of.
Just like with which people don't understand, just like with the prosecutor, his job is not to get a guilty verdict. His job is to do what's right. And when you see something, you don't bring a case to court when it goes against when it's not a criminal offense. And that's what this prosecutor did, because he knew that I had an exemption from day one. He knew I had an exemption, and he should have said, "You can't bring this to me. She has a disability." Do you know that not one of the people on the stand said they knew what was in the mask mandate? Not one. So
They
how
just
can you
they just knew that it was their job to make you wear a mask.
exactly? Exactly. They don't know their oath. They don't know anything. I had to read to them what was in the policy stating what they're supposed to do about the Constitution and all of that stuff. They have no clue. None. I'm like, you
So
just follow. What they do is just follow orders.
so
Doesn't matter who.
how much of a fine did he slap you with?
It wasn't very much. It was like it's $50 and then
Court
100 and
costs.
yeah, so it comes out to 137. Again, to me, this is not about the fine. This is about doing what's right.
No,
And
but it's still a legitimate. I mean, I can't imagine like you're living high on the hog unless you
exactly.
like $137. That's like a half a tank of gas right now.
Tell me about it. Exactly. So it's just frustrating that they think they can just, again, like you said, I don't have money right now. I'm barely scraping by, just like all the other small businesses that have lost everything. But to have something frivolous thrown at you over and over again, when we know what they're doing is unconstitutional, unethical, unlawful, unbiblical, and they're still pushing these agendas because what happened in Rochester? They're still trying to bring the mask mandates back. This is not going away until people stand up and just say no. And that's the most frustrating part. And we clearly see that the judges are not going to protect us. We clearly see the policemen aren't going to protect us. And what was frustrating also reading his ruling, I guess people didn't understand, but I should have made it more clear. In the first video where I'm showing my daughter and they called the security officer, the professor was not calling. Sorry. The professor was not calling the security officer on me. The professor was calling the security officer on my daughter. And that's when I peeked my head around and said, talk to her. And that's when I said, yes, go ahead and call the security officer because I'm calling the sheriff's department. So no, again, I'm saying this because the judge said, again, the wrong things in his rulings. No, the professor was never calling the cops on me. The security officer, I'm sorry. She was calling the security officer on my 16-year-old daughter for being in her classroom without a face mask or a face covering on.
Even though she'd had already presented an exemption prior to this.
Exactly.
Which is what actually started the harassment.
Exactly. My daughter actually sat in the back of the class away from everybody else, more than 6 feet apart. And the professor pushed the desk away to go after her and called out her name and said, "You can't be in here." People thought that she was talking to me. She wasn't talking to me. She didn't even know I was there. She was talking to my daughter this whole time until I peeked my head around. Yeah, it's just ridiculous.
So you went there and actually caught the professor harassing and bullying your daughter, with the professor being unaware of the fact that you were there.
Yes.
And I just, I pointed this out before when we've talked, that the system that's so worried about oppressing minorities has chosen to oppress you, who meets all of the minority check marks.
Yes,
I mean, female, single mom, definitely. I mean, you cover at least 2 different minorities by your ethnicity. I mean,
4 or 5, yeah.
4, yeah, I mean, at least 2. So, I mean, you've got all the intersectional check marks. And your daughter, same thing. And I'm pretty certain that the professor is one of those privileged people. I mean, can't we can use their tools against them, right?
Yeah, that's true.
I know you don't play that game, but I mean, I'm being somewhat facetious, but kind of somewhat serious.
Yeah.
Like, somebody needs to call this professor out for their inherent racism.
Yeah. And the worst part is, this was during February, Black History Month. Yeah. I know. And that's what I was even telling the police officers. I'm like, would you allow the professor to kick her out because she's Black? Would you? Would you say it's okay? I said, there's no difference. She has a disability. Discrimination is discrimination. And they're looking at me like, oh. I'm like, I don't understand the issue here.
I'm kind of getting to the point where I feel like we need to start calling these people out and using their own weapons against them. I mean, I think it's absolutely racist. Your daughter was treated the way she was treated, and you were treated the way you were treated because these people are racist.
Yeah. Oh, I'm gonna
prove me wrong. Prove me wrong. Prove me wrong.
Well, it's even worse than that, because, you know, with CRT and all of that, we clearly see that they're trying to usurp the authority that parents have over their children. And I've already apologized to my daughter over and over again for speaking to her in a mean tone. When I was telling her to show me where her class is, and I had showed that video to the judge, because it is what it is. Yes, I was talking mean to my daughter, but I wasn't yelling. I had the phone right here, and I was doing a mean tone to my daughter, like, "Where's your class?" But again, do you know that's what the judge focused on in his ruling? He said, "Oh, her daughter did the right thing by listening to the security officer," and I guess he didn't see the other ones when I clearly said to the police officer, "How dare he tell my daughter to disobey me?" But this is the authority that these people try to think they have to over people.
So what is there argument that your daughter was intimidated into not wearing a mask? Or
no?
Because I've met your girls, they're on board with your views.
Very much so. Not that it's not hard for them. It's very hard.
Well, yeah,
it's been very hard. It's just like it's hard for me to do any of this, but we have to do what's right. And she wasn't.
So is that his implication that she only was obeying you out of fear because of how you were treating her? Or, I mean, what's that even got to do with the argument?
No, he was trying to argue that I don't really even know, truthfully.
I don't think he knows.
It was about Mike Mumford, and yeah, it made no sense. I'm like, again, but they don't even know what he puts on. I mean, he has all the evidence in front of him, and he puts down the wrong things. He says, "I went into the classroom. I never once stepped foot into the classroom, not once. I opened the door and I said, 'Excuse me, my daughter belongs in this classroom.' That was it." I mean, it's just mind-boggling. Like, it's just frustrating again. But it goes back to everything that we're dealing with. You know, them thinking they have more control over our children than we do as parents, to know what's right for them, to know, even with our doctors that we've discussed this with, that they have more authority over our doctors to say what's okay for our children. I mean, in our exemption, it clearly stated we can't wear face mask or shield of any kind. And Mike Mumford is telling my daughter right in front of my face to injure herself, to put on a mask. Oh, if you can't put on a mask, put on a shield. And she says to him, it's on the thing. "Oh, my doctor said I can't wear a face shield." And he's like, "Oh, you can wear a face shield. Just put on a face shield." So I'm going to charge my phone on me. So for the judge to even say any of these things, sorry guys, I had to turn it around for a second to try to charge my phone so it doesn't die, is mind-boggling. But it just reminds me of CRT, everything that's been going on about, that's what it really comes down to again, is all of the authority that we the people have, parents have, everything. What I didn't bother to tell people, which I should have, which is even more scary. Do you know that the professors were going to call CPS on me?
How did you
I'm
find
not
that out?
because I have a friend. I'm not gonna who is friends with the professors and the school, and one of them told her, not knowing that she knows me, and she said I need to be very careful because they're calling CPS.
For what?
Exactly, for what? Because I'm protecting my daughter. This is how scary this world is that we're living in right now.
I'm just
There's like no words. Yeah. I mean, I don't know if you guys have, most of everyone here is informed that they've seen what they did in New York to fathers not being able to see their children because they didn't make their kids wear a mask, or taking
get
parental rights away because they weren't letting kids wear masks, making their kids
or
wear
taking
masks.
away parental rights from parents who were non-compliant with the jab mandates.
Exactly.
Like, you can't see your kid until you get the jab. I mean,
Yep.
I'm surprised this judge didn't order you to get the jab. I mean,
Truthfully.
because there have been judges that have done that now
Yeah.
for sentencing with people.
Yep.
Oh, and by the way, I'm ordering you to get the jab.
Yeah.
What?
Oh, yeah.
As part of your sentence.
Yep.
I mean, I agree it's punishment, but I'm not doing. So now, if I don't do it, you will criminalize me, and I will go to jail. So, are you going to appeal?
I'm appealing it, and
So now this goes from the county court then for you to the district then?
Yep, to the appellate court. Yep.
To your
And
appellate
so,
court?
yeah.
Yeah, maybe you'll get lucky and we'll end up in Ramsey County because we know that works out well.
Woohoo! Perfect.
So,
But I would hopefully, if people could pray, that I actually would find some lawyers that would actually want to take this on and be willing to fight this mask mandate.
have you reached out? Have you reached out to Upper Midwest Law?
I have.
They're busier and I'll get out. I mean, it's
and I understand that. I know people. There's a lot of.
They're still busy.
Right, but what I've been saying from the beginning, this. If we don't put a stop to it now, look how far it's been. 2 years. I've been saying.
No, it's only been a couple of weeks.
Oh yeah. What was I thinking? A couple of weeks.
Come on, Larvita. It's only been a couple of weeks.
I'm sorry, my time lapse.
2 incredibly long weeks.
Exactly. But we have to put a stop to it. We have to stop this because we know what's happening. They're going to bring it back. Oh, when? Before November? Or everyone's going to.
I know there's like something about an election coming up. So, I'm sure we're probably going to see a resurgence of some sort of variant that's killing everybody's dogs and cats and birds. And we're going to have to probably lock you in your house away from your pets and your children.
Exactly.
And we might have to go ahead and put like plywood on your doors and
exactly.
keep you in your house. Like,
did they do that before? Oh yeah, they did.
I think there was a place where that might have happened overseas, but we would never be that bad. So
no, but I forgot. Yep, they did close down my business, right, because of it. Oh no, that was
that was your fault. That was your fault.
That was totally my fault.
That was all your fault for you could have done the right thing, but you brought that on yourself. So
yep.
But so why don't you keep me posted on when you're gonna go when you go to the appellate court, and we'll talk when you go up there after you get done making your argument there, and let me know if you find anybody that might step in and help take your case. And make sure you send me the link to those Rumble videos so that I'd like to go through and do a breakdown. Because sometimes it helps people to hear somebody talk about it while it, pause it and talk about it as opposed to just watching through it. And we'll see if we can get the documents up, the ruling up somewhere so that people can see it.
And if anyone, I have to raise money to do want to get a transcript, which is over $900, and then to do to even file for an appeal, it's like $550, and then so yeah, I need to raise money for that, which is a little frustrating. But
Do you have any kind of crowdfunding going on?
for this, no, I don't. I haven't. This is my real first time putting it up.
Well, why don't you look into some crowdfunding? GiftSendGo would be a great place for you to check out. They tend to be much more liberated when it comes to
Yeah.
not silencing people.
Yeah.
And if you get a GiftSendGo going,
Yeah, I had one for my
and
other. It's so horrible. How many cases, right? For my other case, and so frustrating. It's so frustrating.
well, your phone is going to die, and
Yes.
I know you're plugged in, but that doesn't, especially when you're streaming like this, it doesn't help much. So, would you go get out of here and go
Thank you. If you guys
charge
could
your
go check
phone
out-
inside?
I know. If you could check out my it's Al Larvita. It's at Rumble. That's where I have most of everything posted on there. On my Facebook page, I have things on there posted also. Mostly everything's on there, and you can go back and see. If you guys have any questions, you can message me or whatever.
And if you're
I'm trying to think. If you
looking
go to
for
my,
if you're looking for a cause to support besides TC, throw some support towards Larvita for her stuff. So,
well, thank you. Well, I think that was the time that we fight. I mean, before they were coming after me, now we have to go after them, and we need to fight and stand together. So
absolutely.
any support, any words of wisdom, any advice, I would greatly appreciate it.
Well, you stay in
So
touch
thank
through all of
you.
this, and we'll see if we can get some people sent your way to give you a hand.
Okay. Thank you so much.
No, thank you
Have a great
for
day.
doing this so late at night. We'll talk to you soon.
Bye.
Bye. Like I said, people are just they have no idea just how long, this was only supposed to be 2 weeks, ladies and gentlemen. It was only supposed to be 2 flippin' weeks. And here we sit over 2 years later, and they're still abusing the crap out of people. The Lisa Hansons and the Lisa Monets and the Larvitas and the Janes and the others that are out there that have just had so much crap come their way. And for what? Why? Because they don't buy into the argument of the state. And, as I was saying as well, we saw tonight or today at the Minnesota GOP endorsing convention, a candidate for Congressional District 1 stood up and said, I identify with this individual more, but I'm going to support this individual so we can win. And I'm trying to figure out how I'm going to handle this because I'm pretty angry, because it just shows how much people are willing to compromise. It's basically a statement of, well, here are my ethics and values, but they don't matter to me, so I don't really value my ethics. What I value more is winning. And don't get me wrong, winning is incredibly important, but what good does it do you to win and not have held onto your values and your ethics? This isn't my normal Saturday SitRep. I've got other stories that I'd like to talk about, but I just felt like I needed to talk about the frustrations of what I experienced today. And there's going to be some videos, some pretty heated conversations coming out. And quite frankly, I don't care if people don't like it. I saw a sergeant at arms for the Minnesota GOP convention today that was an absolute bully, thug, tyrant. And he was a Jabba the Hutt looking toad. That video is already up on my Facebook, and I've got GoPro of it, and we will be putting that out. Because I don't care. I don't care who it embarrasses. It's time for the conservative base of the Minnesota Republican Party to take back the party, or we need to start looking elsewhere. And if that means Tim Walz gets elected because the old guard wants to abandon the base, then we get what we deserve. The great theologian John Calvin, writing about leaders and rulers, said that when God wants to judge a nation, he grants them wicked rulers. Let that sink in. If you're a true conservative, true constitutionalist, and a true liberty-loving American citizen, ask yourselves, does the party that supposedly says they represent you actually represent you? Do they vote and make decisions based on what you want, or do they vote and make decisions based on what they think is best for them and padding their pockets? I already know what the answer is. What makes them any different than the leftists that are ruining our country right now? And I told somebody earlier, actually, I think they're more dangerous because they tell you one thing and they do a completely different thing. Tune in on Monday night. I have my friend Kent coming on from Canada, and he's going to give us a Canadian layman's perspective of what's been going on for them. As some of you know, I had Dr. Chris, Dissident Doc, on from Eastern Canada. This friend is more from the central and western part of the nation, the Republic of Canada, and he's got an interesting story. He's got some really good insight, and he's a good friend of the show. So tune in on Monday night, 7 p.m. Central Standard Time, when I have him on and we talk Canadian control. So, my friends, until next time, sic semper tyrannis.
We are go for liftoff in T-minus 30.
Stand by for further instructions, Minnesota Black Robe Regiment.
Secondary guidance systems engaged.
Minnesota Black Robe Regiment, it will be on my mark.
All systems are a go. All systems are a go.
Minnesota Black Robe Regiment, you are over the target. You are authorized to fire at